We just lost Gary Rossington the other day, and I know that Junkyard toured with Lynyrd Skynyrd. Do you have any Gary Rossington stories? And I guess Tim wasn't in the band at the time, were you?
No, but Tim was there, and Tim's our stories about Gary were pretty normal, but Tim's story is probably the best.
Oh, actually, they asked me to come down, and they were doing the Skynyrd tour. Maybe it was one of the last shows of that tour, but that was the Union tour, so it was a big deal, and it was sheds and arenas and stuff like that. And so Brian's like, "Oh, come down to the OC show. It'll be a hoot. It's a nice venue. Little Caesar was on the bill." And so I get down there, and they'd been there all day, because they would just go and shower at the venue. The drill, Jason. So like no hotels, bus, so they're there all day. And it's a nice backstage and all that stuff. So I go in the backstage, and it's middle of the day. We're, of course, like drinking beers and whatever, and being our usual, like, let's have some beer. And there was a catering thing, and Junkyard at the time, I assume, just got a couple fifths of Jack Daniels and cartons of cigarettes and 2 cases of Budweiser, whatever the fuck it was. But there was a couple, fifths of Jack Daniels on the catering table. And it's like cement room. You know what these rooms look like, these dressing rooms. And so we're all kind of sitting there talking, and in the doorway walks Gary Rossington, and he looks just like Gary Rossington. He's not like in day of show outfit. He's like in show outfit, but it's noon. And so he's got like, he wears the long shirt, he's got the cowboy boots and the bell-bottom jeans and the hat, and he's pulled down, he's got a goatee. And we're all like, I hadn't been on the road there for months. This is the first time I ever seen a member of Skynyrd in person. I grew up on fucking Skynyrd. I'm like, wow. And I'm like, wow, it's fucking Gary Rossington. And he's like, "How you boys doing?" And we're like, "We're good," just like. And he kind of just sits there, and he's like, "All right." He walks in the dressing room, walks over to the catering table, grabs the fifth of Jack Daniels, turns around and walks out. And right by the doorway, there's one of those big, tall plastic trash cans. He just kind of turns around and just kicks the trash can over, all the shit flying out into the dressing room, and walks out. Doesn't say anything. I'm like, wow, that was awesome. He was so great. I was like, fucking Gary Rossington. And he just grabs the fifth of Jack, kicks over a trash can, and walks out of the opening band's dressing room. Like, oh, yeah, they're intimidated. Don't worry. They're intimidated.
Wow. That's classic. So Gary Rossington trashed your dressing room. That's awesome.
Great.
Literally.
We all were just like, I think he walked out. We all went, oh, this is so awesome. We were so excited. They were like little teenagers, like, oh, my God. You're so fucking cool. That was my one Gary Rossington story. That was a pretty good one, though.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah. You guys, you've got Chris Gates coming out with you for a few shows here and there. Has there ever been any talk about Brian Baker coming out and doing anything, or is he just so busy with Bad Religion that
he's due. There's no doubt. He's done a bunch with us. When Chris left originally, he came in and was the guy. It was only when it became obvious that we were going to have to tour with High Water a lot more than we had before that we're like, we got to get someone who could just come. He had a lot of shit going on, obviously. So it was originally, I came in and started playing Brian's parts in the band when it was Chris, and then Chris left, and I took all of Chris's parts, and Brian came back and did his parts, and so. But Brian's due. I imagine if the timing's right, in a heartbeat. He's signing with us at M3. It's very much being in the same place and the availability and all that other kind of thing. But I think with the right environment, he would love to do it. I know he loves doing it. It's fun,
Yeah.
It's so different from Bad Religion. It's always a hoot, So
even during the time in 2014, 2015, 2016, while he was in Bad Religion, he did a couple shows with us at the Viper Room, and he did 2 shows with us at the Whiskey, one in Van Nuys with Bucket. So it's
he's around, he's writing on this new record. He wrote a ton on High Water with me. He played on High Water. He's around. It's not like he's not around. He's in the ether. He contributes still. His physical presence is rare, but his actual intellectual property is more prevalent than people probably realize.
Wow. Yeah. What would you say has been the highlight since the band has been reactivated since 2017?
There's been a lot. We had one year where I think we got close to the most amount of shows that we used to do back in the day. And I want to say that was like 2018 or 2018 or 17. I think we tallied it, and it was like, oh, we did we did a significant amount of like 80 shows or something like that. It's like, oh, that's up there for like 1989, 1990 for us. And that point, at the end of that year, I think it was that was a highlight for me. I think because I think it was the last show out of those 80 shows in San Francisco, and it was a fun show. I think it might have been New Year's Eve or something like that. But that's a highlight for me. But I mean, in general, every show is a highlight because at our age, just walking out of the house is a highlight. Fuck.
I mean, there's a lot of that. Like, you know, I mean, if people turn up still, I consider that a highlight. It's kind of a miracle. You know, we're blessed that people still have interest, you know, and sometimes there are more people that have more interest and sometimes there are less. That's the nature of it, you know, but I guess the highlight, you know, I mean, I think High Water being so well received, or especially when Faded came out, we had no idea what that was going to be about, you know, and then when that was on Coolest Song in the World on Little Steven and aired for months, I'd hear it all the time. And it's the one time I was driving my kid to school because I have Sirius, and we would play the radio and I would come on. And that's the only time in my life that it ever happened. And I would take him into school in the morning, and it would, you know, say 7:20, which, you know, is prime drive time on Garage. And it would come on. And he's like, "That's you." And I go, "Yeah." And then he'd get back in the car, pick up 4 o'clock or whatever. And it just by having heavy rotation, it was back on again. He's like, "They're playing it again." And I go, "It's in heavy rotation. Who the fuck knew?" You know what I mean? And for some reason, it stayed in heavy rotation for longer than the average one. And so that's kind of a highlight. I mean, just to hear yourself in your own car is pretty neat. And especially later. I'm just talking about, like, this is like, you know, that record came out, we were all probably 50, right? Or close to it.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was like, wow, this is happening now. And then I remember we were playing M3, which would end up being
that was a highlight.
Show. Like, we kind of go into a lot of the shows like, do people know us or like us? I don't know. We don't know. And we played it. We had a great show, but the label called and said, "Oh yeah, you guys, that record, the album's going to fucking chart on some metal chart in actual Billboard." I'm like, what? You fucking kidding? And all these things were just beyond, like, wow. We thought like
okay.
In our mind, the hardcore fans would buy this record and it would be cool, but you know, and then it's, you know, it was critically well received. That's also very nice. And and there are, like I've talked about, there are some people that's their entry point to Junkyard. Like, oh, you made other records? Like, yeah, there was a couple a long time ago. So we made some fans like, no, I bought High Water first. It's great. I mean, there's others. I'm like, that to me, those are kind of like, well, okay, well, it works as its own freestanding entity now. It could exist separately from the old if you cleaver them apart. It is a full-blown concept that is equally as valid. Now, we wouldn't have the fan base we have without the old. We all, of course, know that. But we have reestablished the brand or the band as an ongoing concept again, and I think that's a pretty big achievement. It's hard to do.
Yeah, definitely,
Yeah. Very, very good point. And there's a reason, you know, I mean, first of all, you take a hiatus like that and then you come out with a new album. It makes sense that a new generation might discover the latest album and not be aware of the previous, you know.
I love that. When that happens, that's just like, that's Christmas to me.
Yeah.